Alright, so the first stage of the RGB LED is to clean this out a little bit. So basically there's 4 columns that need to be cut out of here. I use this type of knife right here. It's a very cool knife for this type of hobby. So you just clean out those structures. Don't print these with any kind of support material. It has all the support material I ever need built within. And you need to clean out these 2 holes right here. I use electronic drill bit for that, but you can use any really small drill bit. You got this little cross thing that prints separate. The story behind that is it needs to go just like that. So you glue that on. I know I'm not a big fan of glue, but I actually am nowadays. Whatever gets the job done. I use this stuff right here. And the nice stuff about this type of glue is it really does a nice job of like a bonding to the plastic and disappearing quite nicely. I'll end up spraying this with some renewing spray in the end. It goes on just like that, and stuff is not too bad on the human skin either. That's what's nice about it. That should be really secure. A little bit too much, but the bottle is freaking huge. I mean, look at the tip. So, not for the faint of heart. Alright, I'll let that dry, and that's that for that piece. The other pieces come out pretty clean. You can see this one has a bajillion holes, and this one might need a little bit of cleaning up as far as like in this crack. So this is for your acrylic, this is for your RGB LED, and this is the part you gotta clean up a lot. Alright, let's go to the next stage. Okay, our next stage is the 22 gauge wire. So we need a section of this that is about equal to your hand, maybe a little longer. And what we need to do is take some pliers that have the ability to do this. Again, these are just scrapbooking pliers I found at a hobby store, but I'll tell you what, I use them all the time. Love those. Highly recommended tool. So this goes like nope, goes like this. Okay, so longer one goes in the left hand side when pointed like this, and then so it's going to go just underneath this. You're going to have to bend it just a little bit to get it past the tongue. I'll explain what that tongue does here in a sec. Go like that. You bend it right there. And then it goes back up through the hole. Just like threading a needle. Just like that. Oops. And actually, this one just goes straight across like that, and then we can cut it off to right about this tongue here. Try to focus in on that. So there's that piece. Okay. And on the back side of this, we could, I'll just leave that for right now, but we're going to cut it off eventually. For right now, we can use it for strength. Okay, next piece of wire. Well, hopefully the same length. This one's a little different. It's going to go under here. So it just has to have enough to go under there. This is where you might want to insert the battery. I actually left my battery upstairs, but I'll go get it in here in a sec. I got this other battery, it's a 2032. It will work for right now. Again, I highly recommend 2025 batteries, because the 2032 batteries are a little thick. So this is going to be, so this wire goes on top, and I just had to have it so the battery goes in there. Alright, be right back. Battery. Okay, I'll try to do this look at it at the same time. So I'm fitting it down in there, and I'm sliding the battery in so that wire stays on top, just like that. See, now it's trapped underneath there. And now there's a little hole right next to it. We're going to go down into that hole. I think the funnest thing about this is engineering the idea of the wire and how it can loop around and still make contact with all the different parts of the light. I think that's the best part of this. Okay, so need to kind of clear this hole out. I always look for these really insane challenges. Stuff that people would never want to do. Like that Dexter action figure. If you're unfamiliar with Dexter, Dexter's on Thingiverse. He was my last summer project. So there we go. Again, goes like that. And then back down into this one. It's going to stick out just a little bit like that. Push it to the side just a little bit, and then back up one more time. Then I'm just doing a toothpaste roll here until I get that sort of flush. Not too flush. I want it to actually sit up just a little bit. And then I'll cut that off. Just like that. And I want that kind of flush because I don't want it to rub against anything. Alright, so there's the wire. Intermits with the battery, and now we have to do a couple pieces of copper strip right here. Okay, so this stuff is invaluable. You get this at your local hobby store. It's the same stuff they use on stained glass windows. So it's sticky on one side. It's just a copper tape. So basically what we're going to do, I'm going to put a piece underneath this, from here to here. Cut it off. And I'm doing another piece just next to that. So so it makes it a little thicker. Now you can buy this tape a little bit thicker. It's Spark Fun. In fact, Spark Fun has this huge roll, and I own one of those rolls, and I'm proud to own one of those rolls. It's like 4 inches. No, maybe it's 3.5 or something like that. Alright, so there we go. And now what I'm going to do is solder this. I don't have my soldering iron with me, but I'm just going to solder it and show you how I soldered it and the way it looks. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, so this is what I did with the solder. So it's a 40-watt iron. I hit it real quick, and that's what it does. To test this out, so this is going to be your negative, this strip right here, and this little thing is going to be your positive. So just take your LED and make sure it lights up. Here it does. Okay, so that's that piece right there. Try to get it in one video. Notice that wire is going underneath, just like that. Up and around. Good to go. Alright, let's go on to the next step. The next step requires much patience. Alright, so there's a couple different routes you can go with this. There is the hard way and the hard way. Here is this. I'll give you the way that's hard, but not so hard that you want to give up. Okay, so we're going to need a few pieces of wire, one for every color. Since these holes are rather big, what happens is it will fit one of these, and it will fit the leg of the actual LED also. So here's my suggestion. These are your 4 right here, okay? And when you have it like this, so we have it like this. This one right here is your ground. Okay. So that one we don't have to do. So it's going to go up, then back down, so this first one's pretty easy because you can just pull it out. So just like that. Alright. Now it's back down to that hole. This time's a little harder. Generally keep my thumb on that. Pull through. This is really hard to show on camera, guys. Just letting you know. Okay, so it goes down, back up, down, and then through the hole. Now there's 2 holes over here, you just ignore those. And it doesn't matter which hole you stick it in on. There's 2 to choose from right here. That one. I can't do that and look at the There we go. See how it's threaded, but now you got this little bump. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to start pulling on it here, and then going like that. Keep doing that over and over again until it's really taut. Okay. Now, if you want, we would do the toothpaste roll here. Perfect. Just let that hang out. Now, what you're going to do is the same thing for this hole. So it goes in, out, in, back out. Same thing on this one. So in, out, out. Alright, so I'm going to try to do the other ones off camera because, yeah, this could get annoying. Alright, the final should look like this. Okay, remember that one's your ground. Okay, so now I'm going to have to trim off all these wires. I'm only going to trim them from this side. I just left a little bit, like maybe 1/2 a millimeter, 0.5 millimeters. Something really small. Now, you take your RGB LED. And these are common cathodes. If they're common anodes, don't use those, because everything would be backwards. Actually, you just flip the battery upside down, I think. Don't quote me. It's been a long day. So what I'm going to do is stick these in there, right next to the wires. Again, I can't do that and look through the lens of that camera. It would make me sick. So it looks like that. And like that. So now what you're going to do is you're going to solder those to those wires. Be careful, the ABS plastic could get hot and smoke. Do not breathe the smoke. Repeat, do not breathe the smoke. In California, it's been known to, and only in California, been known to cause bad stuff to happen. Actually, I would believe anywhere, but smoke plus plastic equals bad anywhere you go. So I'm going to solder those, and then I'm going to trim them. Okay, the final product looks like that. See how there's these big, huge solder points? So you're going to try to flush cut those as best you can using angled pliers or angled nippers. And you want to get them as close to the surface as possible. Except for the ground. Ground, you don't want to do that. Now if you heat those back up, what they'll do is they'll be nice and rounded instead of harsh like that. So I'm going to heat them back up. The result looks like that, with the ground sticking out. Again, these are going to be cut eventually, but I like putting solder on those also. That way they don't sink back in. So it's in a little bit. First off, we have to do one thing with this. So we have to protect everything else from being touched inside the switch. Okay, so I have some stuff that I use all the time. They use this for overhead transparencies. So, this is overhead transparency paper. This is the kind that goes through an inkjet. Now, if you think about an inkjet, or maybe not an inkjet, a laser printer. But if you think about that for a sec, laser equals heat. So this one handles a lot of heat, tons of heat. In fact, it's almost as good as Kapton tape, in my humble opinion, which is well, really reluctant to catch on fire at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this over that right there, and I'm going to just kind of push, and it's going to take and put an indent on it. Then I'll drill that out. Carefully so I don't drill my finger. There we go. So there's a square of that down in there, and you can see that it's covering over that all the way up. Just this one's good, this one's a little bit too much, and that one's a little bit too much. So what I can do now is take my clippers and kind of trim it to the same as the first one. So here's another trick to do that. So it went in like this. I'm just going to cut the corners off. About 2 millimeters in. Okay, what I'm going to do is put a little bit of super glue on the other side of this and then press it down and let it dry, and that should protect it from this thing, this one to ground out from it. So let me do that and I'll let it dry, then I'll show you the next step of winding this. Okay, so that's still a little wet, but what I'm going to do is press forward here. So what I'm going to do is press this down so it's flush. You can see the glue's on that side. And then I'm going to make a donut. Have a loop around. So it's just like that. See that? I just pressed it down and then looped it around. Now I'm going to solder the two together so that it's a closed loop. And it looks like it's going to foul out against this one right here, but it won't because I got that thin layer of transparency between it. Okay, I'm going to go solder that. Alright, I would set this thing to short and just test this out. Trust me, when you make the first couple of these, until you get your dexterity up, what you're doing is touching that metal ring in the center, and then you're touching all three of these to make sure that nothing falls out. To test to see if it works, you just go like that. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to cut these so they go over the edge. I'm going to butter those with solder, and then I'm going to put a nice little bead of solder right there, and right there. I'll show you what that looks like here in a sec. Okay, see how there's like a little lump of solder right there? Lump, lump, lump. Front side, lump, lump, lump. Okay, that'll prevent it from going back in, and this will make it easier for that to make contact with it. So this little wire right here will make contact with those. Okay, so I've not tested this. Now, sometimes it requires some love, I want to say. Call it love. I want to say working it back and forth until it gets, there's blue. Again, I'm just kind of working it back and forth until I can get over some of these lumps. Sometimes you can take pliers. Oh, there's green. Red should be right around in here somewhere. Once you twirl this around about 52 times, you'll have a switch that is real easy. Yeah, there we go. There's red. So keep rotating it around, and it should be good to go. Now, another thing you could do is move that wire in a little bit. So, be back. My battery's dying. Alright, so after working a little bit, I got it working pretty good. And what happens is, I wanted to show you how I kind of debug this. So, here, you see these, how they're separating off. Like if I turn it and there's a hard spot somewhere, I notice that this one right here has been lifted where these are really close. Okay, so in that area, that's telling me that this has a little bit too much maybe solder on that one point. So I kind of mark that off. Maybe somewhere right there. So that just gives the indication which one's the problematic one. So I'll rotate it again. And there's red. And I notice that one hasn't been lifted up. Green. And blue. Alright, so if you need to tear this apart, look for these right here. And the best way I found is, again, use this hook knife and just kind of go like that, it pops right out. So look for the offending one, which is this one, and if you see, this one has a big glob right there. So that one needs to be toned back just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we'll try it out again. Ooh. Definitely turns a lot easier if I can hold on to it. Yeah, it looks a lot easier. Red, green, blue. Good. Okay, so the last thing we have to do is put this shield on. This one's super easy to do, so I don't think it even requires any kind of like mention how to do it, other than it requires glue, and you glue this piece into position. And then, whenever you're developing your acrylics, make sure you have a notch here. You can match that notch using the Illustrator file. Okay. And depending on how much of these stand up, sometimes you have to adjust those. Sometimes if you have a taller bulb, you might have to file that down on the inside if you didn't get it all the way up there. Usually what I do is have something like this, and I'll just rotate it in that area. Careful not to split it too much. And then it should drop down on there. Yep. Cool. So now I just glue that into position, and then put 2 drops of glue here and glue that into position. There's my candle Clix RGB. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Have a good one.